Recently in my area, a trail of kidnappings have been taking place. This is unordinary. I've lived in this area for my entire life, and there's been less kidnappings, murders, and major robberies than I have fingers. And the way these kidnappings have been taking place are also unordinary. The reports would state that people would be driving along the mountain roads at night and come across a mannequin, either in the middle of the road or on the side. They'd pull over thinking that the mannequin was a person. After realizing what it actually was, they would rush back to their car and drive away, while calling in to the local station. At least once they got their service back. Not long after these reports came in, the police began to trace these back to some disappearances that had been taking place in the area. I didn't know any of this until it was too late. The story begins as I was coming back early from visiting a friend that had moved away for college. At a point during the 5-hour drive, I was going to have to go through a pretty long mountain road, which is exactly why I had to come home early. The day I was originally planning to leave, a huge snowstorm was said to be moving in that day. So trying to be a sensible person, I decided to just cut the trip down a day. The idea of me staying an extra day had been thrown out there, but I didn't want to miss both school and work that day, so I made what I thought was a responsible choice. Now, being the giant pansy that I am, I left pretty late into the night because I hate driving on busy roads with lots of people, so I left around 8 p.m. By the time I reached the mountain road, it was past midnight and I couldn't see another car for miles. That's when the storm rolled in. It started off small, just a few lazy flakes fluttering down from the sky, before turning into a blinding haze of white. I considered turning back, but the nearest place of any kind to sleep at had been nearly 2 hours back. I also reasoned with myself that it might just be easier to try and slowly make my way through the mountain alone than trying the next day with more people. After my decision, I soldiered on through the snow. As I continued further and further into the mountain, the storm only grew in ferocity. By the time I had made it halfway through, I was driving the bare minimum speed to keep my car moving. All I could see was white storm and darkness. My headlights were unable to pierce through any of it, making my surroundings completely imperceptible. This forced me to slam on my brakes when a silhouette came close enough to my car that I could actually perceive it. Even going less than 25 miles an hour, I nearly couldn't stop in time. Whoever it was stood less than a few feet away from my car, but even then I could hardly make out any details about this person. I sat in my car trying to calm myself. After my heartbeat settled, I realized what was actually in front of me. There's a person out here? I shoved my door open, which proved to be a difficult task because of the overbearing wind. As soon as I stepped out into the snow-covered road, my door was slammed shut. Great. If this person's a freak, I'm stuck out here. This thought genuinely made me consider climbing back into my car and driving around this person. Most smarter people would have done that. Instead, I trucked through the howling winds and inches of snow to the front of my car. Hey! What are you doing out here? I shouted over the storm. There was no response. The figure just continued shaking with each strong gust of wind. 1,000 terrible ideas went through my mind as to what kind of person this could be. But then another stream of thoughts told me why this person wouldn't respond. What if someone let them go out here hours ago? They'd be freezing, barely clinging to consciousness. They might not be able to hear me over the winds. They might be completely focused on something entirely different. Anything to calm my nerves. It was a scenario like that which pushed me on. I started forward, but as soon as I took my first step, I completely froze. Suddenly the cold fell away. The sound of the storm barely registered with me anymore. All that really mattered was what I was looking at. A mannequin. A mannequin standing in the middle of the street. I looked it up and down, still petrified. That's when I noticed the stakes that were barely poking out of the snow, as if someone had staked the mannequin to the road itself or something else underneath of it. Something heavy enough to hold it down in these winds. Suddenly movement and my senses all came back to me at once and I ran to my car. I forced the door open after fighting with it for several agonizing seconds. I climbed into my car as the door was once again slammed shut behind me. I threw my car into reverse and backed just far enough that I could go around it. I pushed my gear back into drive and slammed my foot onto the gas pedal. My tires spun for a moment before the car started moving forward again. I had a second of relief when my car broke free from the snow. Then my blood ran cold. I heard something slap the back of my car. I spun around in my seat, still pressing down on the gas. My back door had been pulled open and the automatic light shone bright. Bright enough that I could just make out the silhouette of a person. An actual person. But then I was gone. My back door was ripped away from whoever it was and was forced to shut as I sped down the snowy path. My car left the mountains over an hour later. An hour of non-stop paranoia. Paranoia that I would encounter another mannequin. Paranoia about whoever that was and what they were trying to do. My chest ached by the time I escaped the frozen trail and returned to civilization. Now that's technically the end of the story. I took my time trying to figure out how and who I would tell this story to. I had to figure out what had happened that night. I was with some friends one night when we got on the topic of scary stories. Naturally, I brought this up, and when it was finally over, they asked me if I had heard about the other incidents of this happening. I said no, so they proceeded to tell me about the kidnappings that I had been completely unaware of. They'd only started 2 weeks before I left on my trip. I don't keep up on the news too well because, again, nothing ever happens here. Hearing this nearly sent me into shock as all the scenarios of how that night could have gone flashed through my mind. I could have slipped on my way back to the car, the wind could have picked up locking me out of my car. What if my car had taken just a moment longer to break free of the snow? And that man, whoever he was, could have gotten into my car and done something to me. I don't know. If any of that had happened, I probably wouldn't be here.